Everyone knows New York City is expensive, and today we're going to break down the true costs of living in New York City. We're going to discuss everything you need to know, from everyday costs to housing and taxes, and how that all relates to the lifestyle that you want to create here in New York City. It might not be for everyone, but this will give you a great framework to work with. And trust me, some of these costs might surprise you, especially the ones you might not remember to budget for. And make sure to hit subscribe below, because each week we're going to be dropping new videos about what it's like to live in New York City. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to dive into everyday living costs here in New York City. We are going to talk about groceries. We're going to talk about dining out. We're going to talk about Wi-Fi, cable, Con Ed, your utilities, things like that. One of the aspects in the cost of living that people feel on a daily basis is the cost of groceries. Groceries in New York City are expensive just because they have to be transported into the city, but there's options. So grocery stores such as Trader Joe's, they package all their stuff, they produce all their stuff. So it's all Trader Joe's brands, and they're able to offer it at a more affordable price than, say, Whole Foods. Whole Foods carries more recognizable brands and is more expensive for sure. And we'll get into some price differences in a minute, but what I want to talk about is how people get groceries in New York City, because there's a cost associated with that. So first, let's talk about, like, if you live a few blocks from the grocery store, you're gonna walk to the grocery store, you're gonna have several bags that you're gonna have to carry home. Most people get a little trolley and they carry the trolley home, and that's how they get their groceries. But if you live a little bit farther, that can be a lot. And you're not gonna carry, if you do a heavy shop, you're not gonna carry 4 heavy bags with you. Then there's the alternative of you're gonna get an Uber, because most likely it's hard to hail a taxi cab down when you have 4 bags of groceries. So if you get an Uber, you're adding the cost of groceries. And one of the things that I actually do a lot myself is I order online, because I figure out by the time it costs me to get an Uber home and the time that I spend grocery shopping, I could be making money working instead. So, you know, it's a time value of money. So there are several different ways, again, walking to and from the grocery store, getting a car service back, or simply ordering online. Okay, so as I promised, I'm gonna give you the cost of a few groceries so you can understand some of the prices here in New York City and the differences between, say, Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. Okay, organic milk at Trader Joe's is $4.49. At Whole Foods, it's $7.49. Organic eggs at Trader Joe's is $5.49. And at Whole Foods, it's $8.79. And then, interestingly enough, chicken breast is not very different. At Trader Joe's, it's $7.49 a pound compared to $7.99 a pound. All right, so let's dive into eating out here in New York City. That is truly an art form. New York City obviously has incredible cuisine with a broad range in type and price. So you can get a $2 or $3 slice of pizza, all the way up to a $500 tasting menu at Per Se. You can also get nearly anything delivered to your home at this point. So there are so many options available to you, and we're gonna actually take you to lunch because it's time for a lunch break. So let's go. Okay, so this is a great example here of a New York City lunch. This is at a healthy place that I love to eat called Impact Kitchen. It's actually from Toronto, so I gotta give them a great plug. But we have 3 of us here eating lunch today. I'm the one with the big monster plate, and the guys ended up getting these little small bits and pieces, and we each have a drink. And so today lunch is $60.64. My sandwich is $22. So if the 3 of us got sandwiches, we probably would be at a total of $100 for 3 people for lunch in New York City. You know, it is possible to do less and get something that's more affordable, but I'd say this is kind of what your standard is. There's a lot of restaurants probably similar to this where you can get kind of a quick and easy bite to eat, but this is what I love, and there's a lot of options here. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about are utilities. Utilities here in New York City are a little bit different because a lot of times some of it is included in either your monthly common charges or your rent. So water and gas are almost always included. You're never going to have a separate bill for those things. If you're in an older building that has a boiler and offers steam heat, that's always going to be included in your monthly common charges or rent. So you really only need electricity to run your lights. And then if you have like central heat and AC, so forced air, you'll have an electric bill. And I would say most people's Con Ed, which Con Ed is our service provider, most people's Con Ed bill is anywhere from $150 to about $300, depending on the size of the apartment, the time of year, and how often you're running your AC or your heat. All right, so let's get into cable and internet. Usually cable and internet is bundled. There are two service providers, Spectrum and Verizon Fios. There are differences between the two. You get New York One when you get Spectrum, but you get faster internet with Verizon Fios. Not every building has Verizon Fios. It just depends on your building. Newer buildings will have it. The cost is usually $50 to $90 a month, depending on the speed. And if you want the highest gigabyte speed, it's usually just over $100 a month. But often that gets bundled with your cable. So if you are somebody who uses cable, like we use cable in our house, we like New York One, and we actually have to have every single hockey game. So our cable bill that's bundled with our Wi-Fi is $325 a month. And the last time I was at Spectrum, they told me that I had the highest cable bill they've ever seen. That's a true story. So you definitely can do it for a lot less. And most likely, I would expect a bundle with standard cable and a few of the add-ons, you're gonna be around $250, maybe $200 a month. So that's your cable and internet. Hi, I'm Heather Domi, and I lead the Heather Domi team here in New York City. We help buyers match their lifestyle with the perfect neighborhood. And today, we are breaking down how we do that and what it truly costs to live in New York City. If you're thinking that you want to dive a little bit deeper on all of these topics, we have an incredible relocation guide on our website, heatherdomi.com. The guide's called Launching in New York, and you're going to be able to see breakdown for every single neighborhood and all of these details. But I know what you might be wondering now. You might be wondering how you get around the city and what that costs. So we're going to get into transportation next. Getting around New York City comes at every price point, from $2.90 subway swipes to city bike memberships to $50 Uber rides late at night to parking garages that cost $1,000 a month or more. Our subway system here in New York City is incredible. We have over 472 stops and nearly 600 miles of track. The subway runs 24/7, so you can take it any time of day. Now, most people who ride the subway consistently, they get a subway pass for $132 a month, and that is unlimited. And the great thing about the subway pass is that you are able to use it on the buses as well. Sometimes buses are needed, especially if you're moving cross town, but I'll tell you, it is really great to be able to have that monthly unlimited subway card. Some employers even give it out as a perk to living in New York City. Our city has been transformed by City Bike. City Bike has been around, I'd say, for about maybe 10 years, and they really changed the city into a commuter city where there's bike lanes on almost every major street and side street. We have over 30,000 bikes with over 2,000 bike stations, so it's very easy to find a bike wherever you go. City Bike annual passes are $219, but the one thing I say, A, be careful when you're riding a bike. You should really carry a helmet, and also, as a pedestrian, make sure you're looking both ways when you cross the street because people don't follow the bike rules. So let's talk talk about how we get around this town on 4 wheels. So either ride shares or taxi cabs. Most people, when they're using ride shares in the city, they're using Lyft or Uber. I find Lyft to be a little bit more affordable. So the same trip when you're in a Lyft or an Uber could cost $15 one day or $50 another day. And it really, really depends on what's going on. So if it's raining, snowing, it's a busy time, there's a lot of traffic in the city, they're gonna do surge pricing and it can get really, really expensive. An alternative, obviously, to Uber and Lyft are taxi cabs. Now, as it relates to taxi cabs are more affordable, but you have to be patient. You have to walk to a street where more taxis would be driving down. You need to find a taxi cab with a light on, so one that's available, and you have to hail them down. So that requires a little bit of patience and sometimes a little bit of strategy, but it's $3 just to sit down in a taxi cab. And then they charge 70 cents for every 1/5 mile. There's also a little formula for when you're sitting in traffic where they add time, but it still ends up being much more cost effective than a ride share. It's just you have to have the patience for that. And at the end of the day, it really is nice to support the local economy and our taxi cab drivers. All right, so if you're thinking of bringing your automobile to New York City, a lot of people do not. In fact, 56% of New Yorkers do not own a car. But if you do own a car and you want to bring it here and you want to park it close to where you live, it's going to cost you. Our parking garages cost anywhere from $500 to $1,000 and sometimes more. It just really depends on the location. So if you're in a prime neighborhood like Tribeca or the Upper East Side and you're closer to Central Park, that's when things start getting really expensive in those concentrated areas where people want to be. If you park your car, you're willing to park your car, say, a little bit further away from where you live or even outside of the city, you can find a $500 garage. So it really just depends on how often you need your car and what your budget is, but there is a range and that's what it's going to cost you. One of the things that we specialize in is finding you the perfect home with the perfect commute that saves you time, because at the end of the day, time is money. All right, I know we were just talking about 4 wheels, but now I want to talk about 4 paws, and that's our pets. So the cost of having pets in New York City can be very expensive. So we're going to break that down right now. As an owner of 2 toy poodles, I can certainly attest to what it costs to have a dog here in New York City. And let me tell you, it does come at a premium, but we have every service imaginable, from vet bills to dog sitting, to dog walking, to dog food, daycare, all that. We're going to dive in. I'm going to share with you what it costs to be a pet owner here in New York City. So your lifestyle is truly going to dictate how much your monthly pet bills are. If you're working a lot and you need a couple of dog walks a day, that all adds up, and or doggy daycare, pet sitting. So dog walks typically are $25 to $35 per walk. Doggy daycare is anywhere from $50 a day to, you could get a package for usually about $1,000 a month for 5 days a week, doggy daycare, and they pretty much go and they run around with a bunch of other dogs all day long. Grooming services, anywhere from $70 to $200, depending on if it's just a bath or a full groom. You can also get groomers that come to the house, which would be a little more expensive, more like $250. Boarding and sitting services. So boarding services anywhere from $65 to about $120 a night. And in your home, usually about $120 to $150 a night. Vet bills. So vets are very expensive in New York. I will say that I don't think I get out of my annual checkup for less than $350. And if they do blood work and they hear a heart murmur or whatever it is, I almost feel like it's $1,000 almost every time I go. But, you know, that's just part of living in New York. One great thing that we do have is we do have incredible pet medical services. So we have a really great animal hospital here. So God forbid you ever needed anything. It is very expensive. So I do suggest that you carry pet insurance. And if you're a pet owner, one of the things that my team does best is we make sure that we find the perfect home for you that welcomes your fur babies. And beyond your fur babies, let's now get into the cost of raising your entire family here in New York City. Many people feel that it's impossible to raise a family here in New York City, but it couldn't be further from the truth. That said, it truly is a city of trade-offs, and you're going to hear me talk about the trade-offs a lot. Raising a family requires a balancing act, and that balancing act is going to consist of balancing the cost of living, so whether it has to do with where you're going to school, where you're living, and what those costs look like, finding the ideal neighborhood that fits within your budget, the conveniences, so transportation either to work or to schools, that's very important, and then also the community. So a lot of people plug into the community based on their kids' school or maybe their work life. So let's dive in and let's start talking about childcare and all things family. Okay, so let's get into childcare. So we compiled some numbers for you and we're gonna read them off. Full-time daycare generally is $2,000 to $4,000 a month, depending on the neighborhood and the program that you're in. Babysitting generally $22 to $30 per hour per child is pretty regular in the city. And then as far as nanny services, full-time experienced nannies, anywhere from $35 to $45 an hour is pretty typical. And if you get into more specialized, so like newborn services or more specialized nannies, you're going to be looking at $40 to $60 an hour, depending on the assignment and the experience. Most often, you're paying for quality and proximity so that you have the care that you need just blocks from where you live. Let's talk about schools now. So we actually have some of the best schools, whether they are public or private, here in the country. Some of our public schools there's some magnet schools that are really incredible, offer very specialized programs that you have to test to get into. But then as far as your private schools they're all over the city, but a lot of times they are concentrated uptown. The location matters where the schools are, because public schools, you have to live within the zone. So that's going to dictate your neighborhood if you're trying to match with a public school. Private schools, like I said, they're all over the city. But a lot of times people will not live as close to their school. They might send the kids on the Upper East or Upper West and live downtown. That is an absolute personal preference, but it is something that gives you flexibility with where you live. Okay, as it relates to the cost for private schools, you're looking at about $60,000 a year. Yes, it's like sending a kid to college, but a lot of people have found a lot of value in our private schools here. The other thing that I want to talk to you about relates to after school programs, tutoring, birthday parties, weekend activities. So, of course, all that stuff adds up, but you just want to remember to have a little bit extra in your budget for those things. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about as it relates to school would be transportation, getting to and from school. So there are private school bus companies that you can subscribe to that will do pickups and drop-offs. That's generally anywhere from $2,000 to $7,000 a year. And then there's after-school car services that are usually $20 to $25 an hour that you can also participate in. So there are options if you're not going to be driving your kid to school or you can't walk to school. Let's talk about healthcare. We have some of the best healthcare in the country, if not the world. That said, our healthcare system is unique, in which a lot of doctors here in New York City do not take health insurance, and it is often an out-of-pocket expense. So you want to be really wise and smart when you're choosing your healthcare to make sure that if you want access to doctors out of network, that you have that coverage and you can resubmit for it. New York City is incredible for families. You have so many options, from Central Park to the Natural History Museum to Central Park Zoo, to explore every single weekend. I know you might be thinking, I'm not gonna have a backyard if I'm living in the city, but trust me, there are so many great ways to incorporate our parks and all the activities here into your daily life. You're not even gonna think about it. Listen, if you wanna do a deep dive on all of this, that's what we're here for. Don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'll help you make the perfect game plan. And I know some of you might be worried about all the holidays and festivities that go on, but don't worry, New Yorkers really get into it. Here is a great example of Halloween. But families and singles alike run into the same challenges as it relates to the lifestyle premiums that you find here in this city. The great thing about New York and lifestyle is that it can be as streamlined or as extravagant as you want. And that's the beauty of our city, but also the trap. Okay, so let's get into some of the premiums you might be paying here for New York City lifestyle. We're gonna start with wellness and beauty. So facials, massages, things of that nature. Generally, they start at $200, going up to $400, even sometimes $500. You definitely pay more here in the theory that you're getting really high quality and experienced technicians and massage therapists. So you're paying up for something that's worth it. As far as fitness goes, Equinox has a few options. So you can either get a single club pass, so that means you just go to one club in your neighborhood, or you get an all access pass. The issue with that is that the prime locations for Equinox do not sell a single club pass. So you're already at the point where your gym membership's starting at $335. In the outside the city, often Equinox is anywhere from $210 to $250 for a single club pass. And then here in the city, it's $250 to $290. So there's just obviously a premium here. Real estate is expensive. Rent's expensive, and so they do pass that off. Then if you're talking about classes, so Pilates classes, bar classes, Barry's boot camp, things of that nature generally start around, usually they're around $30, but sometimes you can find deals or packages where they're $20 a class, but expect to pay $20 to $50 a class depending on the class that it is. Then we have social clubs. So social clubs here in New York City, like Soho House, ZZ's, Zero Bond, things of that nature, start anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 annually. And then some of them have initiation fees anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000, even and up. But a lot of people have been using these clubs to create community here in New York, and that's really been a great thing. And then of course there's Broadway. Broadway is amazing because literally you can just say, I feel like going to a Broadway show, and you can just pick up and go. We have great opportunities where you can get day of tickets at discounts, but generally Broadway is $100 plus, depending on where you're sitting. You can do lotteries, which are $30 to $40. And as far as outside of Broadway, of course, we have all kinds of concerts at many different venues across the city. We have at Lincoln Center, we have the ballet, we have the opera. So, there is never, ever a lack of anything to do in this city. And there are great ways to find affordable options to do that. Next up are tremendous amount of museums and galleries that we have here in this city. Many times galleries are for free. Museums, you can take advantage of special days for locals or buy memberships that offer reduced rates to be able to go to the openings of different shows. But in general, expect to pay $20 to $35 to go to a museum for one-off. And then there's hair. So hair can get very expensive in New York. It really depends on what you're looking for and where you go. So you can go from a $40 haircut to literally a $700 haircut. There's just a broad range. And the same with color, whether you highlight or base color, could be $210 in one place, or it could be $400 in the next. So that is very personal, and I probably cannot define what that means for you today. Highlights usually $350 to $600. Again, broad range, depends on where you go and who you see. Okay, and last we're gonna get into laundry and dry cleaning. So if you don't have a washer and dryer in your home, you're going to be having to send your laundry out or do it in probably like the laundry facility of your building. But wash and fold generally is $1.50 to $5 a pound. It depends on where you go, what kind of detergent they're using, how quick you want it. So that's, again, that's very personal, but that's about the range. And then dry cleaning also is more expensive here just because they have to pay for the expensive storefronts, and it's a whole process. So, think $8 to $20 for a shirt, outerwear $15 to $40. I mean, this is not glamorous stuff, but it is city living and things we have to discuss. So yes, lifestyle definitely matters, and it is part of the equation in the cost of living in New York City. And that's what our team is here to help you with. We'll help you to dial all of this in and figure it out how you can make it work here in New York City. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out. All right, so once your lifestyle is dialed in, there's another part of the equation that we have to talk about. And it's one of the big ones, and it has to do with New York City taxes. Okay, taxes. I know it's a big one. New York City and state taxes are big. They are approximately 14.8% of your take home on an annual basis. That said, what happens here in New York City is different than anywhere else as far as career growth and trajectory. So what might take you 10 years elsewhere gets compressed here into about 3 years. So if you look at it from an earning potential, it compounds at a much faster rate here in New York. So yes, you're paying more in taxes, but your earning potential is the sky's the limit. Okay, before we wrap up this category of New York City and state taxes, because I know you're dying for me to get to the cost of owning a home here, I want to share that our New York State sales tax for goods and services is 8.875%. All right, here we are. We are going to dive deep now on housing. This is probably what you've been waiting for and the biggest topic that you want to be able to understand, because it is honestly the most confusing topic when you talk about New York City real estate. You're constantly trying to balance your lifestyle with the cost of living. And that is where the dream meets the math. And that's what we're gonna help you do. We're gonna help you figure all of that out now. One of the most confusing things for people when they start looking for a home here in Manhattan is understanding what the median price means. Right now in Manhattan, the median price is $1.25 million. However, it doesn't really equate or match up with people's searches, because if you're searching for a 2-bedroom, that price, you got to throw that out. 3-bedroom, throw it out. So that generally is about the price of a 1-bedroom. And we do sell a lot of 1-bedrooms here in New York City. So that's what brings our median price down. The way I like to qualify it is by bedroom count. So if you think about different classes of inventory, whether it's your lower price inventory, mid-range, or your ultra luxe, I like to go by bedroom count. So for your lower price point, which is gonna maybe be less convenient transportation or in a neighborhood that's not as developed, I always say plan for 1 to 1.5 million per bedroom count. Your mid-range, which is going to get you a little more center of New York, maybe a little bit more developed neighborhoods, that is going to be 1.5 to 2 million. And then your luxury, you can expect 2 to 2.5 million, and even more depending on where. Okay, now that we've talked on how to budget for a bedroom count, we're gonna get into the different types of inventory, because the type of inventory will dictate the price. So we have 3 different kinds of inventory. We have condos, co-ops, and townhouses. Townhouses, we're gonna do a whole video on townhouses, because the entry price to get into a townhouse is much different than a condo or a co-op. So let's focus on those 2. Okay, so condominiums, often referred to as condos, those are fee simple ownership structures, very similar to a single family home. Most condos have been built within the last 20 years, maybe some last 30 years. That said, it's newer construction and or has been converted with a new build out. So it comes for a premium at a higher price per square foot. But also within condos, you have a lot of amenities. So you're gonna be paying for, on top of the doorman, you're gonna be paying for gyms and playrooms and meeting rooms, pools, you name it. A lot of these buildings are chock full of amenities, and that often increases your carrying costs. Okay, so now let's get into co-ops. Co-ops are very different, and it is the big enigma in New York City that people often are just trying to wrap their head around, because you often don't see it in many other markets. So co-ops are corporations, and you own stock in a corporation. So it's literally shares in the corporation that you own. They come with rules and guidelines as to what you can do and not do with the property. There are certain requirements to be able to purchase in a co-op. There's a board interview. And so that often restricts resale value. And it can also mean that you're going to be paying a lower price to enter. So co-ops, again, you own shares in a corporation. They are often more affordable, but they come with stricter rules. And often you have to put down a higher percentage on a co-op than you do in a condo. All right, as you probably heard, location matters. There's a reason they say location, location, location. Right now, we're in the West Village. The West Village, think Sex and the City. The It Girl location, that's because it has incredible charm, amazing restaurants, great neighborhood amenities, proximity to subways, proximity to the Hudson River. It is such an ideal location, but it comes at a premium. And what buys you $2 million in the West Village, which isn't much, is going to be very different than what you can get $2 million over in the East Village, or even if you're on the Upper East Side, $2 million close to the park is very different than $2 million further east. So don't forget, location here in New York City is everything. Okay, so now we've talked a little bit about price, a little bit about the type of ownership, and we've talked about location. The next thing we have to talk about are closing costs and what to expect when you're purchasing here in New York City. So when you're buying, you need to anticipate 1 to 5% of the purchase price for closing costs. A lot of that depends on the price point because we have an escalation in mansion tax. It goes anywhere from 1% starting at $1 million, going up to 3.9% when you get up into the much higher price points. Then you also have all of your mortgage recording tax. So if you take a mortgage, it's 1.925% of the mortgage amount that goes to New York City. And on top of that, you're going to have, if you buy a new development, the sponsor is going to pass off their closing costs. So you'll have the sponsor's city and state transfer taxes that typically a seller pays when you go to sell. All right, now that you own this home, you might be wondering what it's gonna cost you to carry it on a monthly basis. And what we like to do is we like to bundle the real estate taxes and the common charges into one number, because when you do own in a co-op, your real estate taxes are included in your common charges. So it's kind of a typical standard that we use here in New York. And it really is, it's a good way to apply it also to condos. So by bundling those numbers, we're able to come up with a price per square foot that you're gonna be paying for those common charges. And a realistic number is gonna be anywhere from $2 to $4 per square foot. If you're in a condo with a lot of amenities, or say an older co-op that might have some higher carrying charges, you're gonna be skewing towards the $4. If you're looking at condos or some very efficiently well-run co-ops, you're gonna be at the $2 point. Anywhere though within that range is an acceptable number, but it's all depending on what's acceptable for your budget. Okay, so don't get me wrong, you can definitely do New York City in a budget-friendly way. However, I wanna just give you some starting prices for some of these prime areas that we've been filming in and that we often talk about. So, one bedrooms generally start around $5,000 and up. 2 bedrooms, you could expect $7,000, $8,000 plus, and then 3 bedrooms generally $10,000 to $12,000. And it really all depends on basically where you're going to be living, what amenities are offered, finishes, all of that. So it can start from there and definitely get more expensive. So we've covered a lot here: condos, co-ops, townhouses. I mentioned we're gonna do a whole separate video about townhouses. We've talked about renting. There's definitely ways to create flexibility in the way you live here in New York City, but this city is, as I've said over and over, it is a city of trade-offs, and that's actually where we come in. We help you boil down what your needs are, what your budgets are, and where everything fits together. It's not a simple formula. It's not straightforward. I wish it was straightforward, but it's not. And New York, as great as it is, it definitely comes with its challenges, and that's where an expert can really help make this all work for you. So at the end of the day, you might be asking, what is the real cost of living here in New York City? We're talking about the cost of opportunity, the cost of access, and yes, the cost of living. If you want predictable, this might not be the right city for you. But if you want to grow, if you want opportunity and you have ambition, then this could be the perfect place for you. The cost of living here in New York is not just financial. It is emotional, and it takes a lot out of you just to get here, to get in the grind, deal with the competitiveness and everything that New York offers. And I have to tell you, New York has brought out so much in me that I just didn't even know existed. There was a moment I almost left, and I remember calling my father in the first 6 months that I was here. I was in tears, and he said, "You know what, Heather? The saying is true. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere." And I have to say, it is the truth. It brings out the best in you, and it offers so much. So honestly, I think the true cost of living is not being here. So if you think all of this might be for you and you're ready to take a plunge, or you're still mulling it over, head to heatherdomi.com. You can download our relocation guide, Launching in New York, and it gives all kinds of information about every neighborhood in Manhattan. It gives costs for renting, for buying, transportation options, and all the great amenities in each neighborhood. New York City is complex, but it is one of the greatest cities in the world, and it could be your next best adventure, and you never know who you're gonna meet.